My name is Jasmine Torres, and at 26 years old, I discovered that sometimes the most dangerous predator in your life comes disguised as family who claims to love you. I had been married to Marcus Henderson for 3 years when we welcomed our beautiful daughter Luna into the world, and I thought our biggest challenge would be adjusting to sleepless nights and diaper changes rather than fighting for my child's safety against my own mother-in-law. Marcus and I met in college where I was studying early childhood education while working part-time at a daycare center, and he was completing his degree in mechanical engineering with dreams of starting his own manufacturing company. We built our relationship on shared values about family, hard work, and creating a stable, loving home for our future children, and Marcus always spoke admiringly about his mother, Beverly Henderson, describing her as a strong, successful businesswoman who had raised him as a single mother after his father abandoned them when Marcus was just 5 years old. Beverly owned a chain of upscale childcare centers called Little Angels Academy across 3 states, and she had built her reputation on providing premium, early childhood education services to wealthy families who demanded the highest standards of care and academic preparation for their children. When Marcus first introduced me to Beverly 18 months into our relationship, I was nervous about meeting the woman who had shaped the man I loved, but I was eager to build a positive relationship with someone who would become an important part of our future family. Beverly was an imposing woman in her early 50s, impeccably dressed and professionally polished, with the kind of commanding presence that made it clear she was accustomed to being the most important person in any room. During our first meeting, she questioned me extensively about my background, education, career goals, and family history, conducting what felt more like a job interview than a casual introduction to her son's girlfriend. She seemed particularly interested in my work with children and my plans for combining motherhood with my career in early childhood education, asking detailed questions about my theories on child development, discipline strategies, and educational philosophies that would guide my parenting decisions. Initially, Beverly's intense interest in my qualifications and parenting philosophy seemed like a positive sign that she took my relationship with Marcus seriously and wanted to ensure that I would be a good mother to her future grandchildren. She frequently invited me to visit her childcare centers, showing me the facilities and introducing me to her staff as Marcus's girlfriend, who worked in the same field. Beverly would ask for my opinions about curriculum, development, classroom management techniques, and staff training programs, treating me as a professional colleague whose expertise she valued and respected. She even offered to provide references and networking opportunities that could help advance my career in early childhood education, promising to connect me with influential people in the field who could help me achieve my professional goals. As Marcus and I moved toward engagement and marriage, Beverly's involvement in our relationship intensified, and she began making suggestions about everything from our wedding plans to our future living arrangements and financial decisions. She insisted on paying for a significant portion of our wedding expenses, explaining that she wanted to ensure her son had the kind of elegant celebration that would reflect positively on our family's social status and business reputation. Beverly also pressured us to move into a house in her exclusive neighborhood, offering to help with the down payment and claiming that proximity to her would be beneficial for both my career development and our future children's access to the best educational opportunities. When I became pregnant with Luna, Beverly's behavior became even more controlling and invasive, as she appointed herself as the primary advisor for every aspect of my pregnancy and birth planning. She insisted on accompanying me to doctor's appointments, claiming that her experience with child development gave her valuable insights that could help ensure my baby's optimal health and development. Beverly would question my dietary choices, exercise routines, and prenatal care decisions, often contradicting my doctor's recommendations with her own theories about pregnancy management and child development. She began making purchases for the baby without consulting Marcus or me, filling our nursery with expensive items that reflected her taste rather than our preferences, and explaining that her financial investment in our child's early development was an investment in the baby's future success. The first major conflict occurred when Beverly announced that she had already enrolled our unborn baby in the waiting list for her most exclusive childcare center, explaining that early enrollment was necessary to secure a spot in a premium infant program that would give our daughter the best possible start in life. When I explained that Marcus and I had decided that I would stay home with the baby for the first few years while working part-time as a freelance educational consultant, Beverly became angry and dismissive, claiming that my decision was selfish and would deprive our daughter of the structured learning environment and socialization, opportunities that only professional childcare could provide. She argued that my background in early childhood education made me overconfident about my ability to provide adequate stimulation and development for an infant, and she insisted that her childcare centers offered superior resources and expertise that I could never match as an individual parent. When Luna was born, Beverly's behavior escalated from controlling to potentially dangerous, as she began making demands about feeding schedules, sleep routines, and developmental activities that contradicted both my instincts as a mother and the guidance I received from Luna's pediatrician. She would arrive at our house unannounced and criticize my parenting techniques, claiming that I was holding Luna too much, feeding her on the wrong schedule, and failing to provide adequate intellectual stimulation for proper brain development. Beverly began bringing educational materials and developmental toys that she insisted were necessary for Luna's cognitive growth, and she would become angry when I didn't implement her suggestions exactly as she recommended. The situation reached a crisis point when Luna was 4 months old, and Beverly announced that she had consulted with family law attorneys about filing for grandparent visitation rights and possibly seeking emergency custody of Luna if Marcus and I continued to make what she considered harmful parenting decisions. She claimed that my decision to breastfeed Luna on demand rather than following a strict schedule was causing developmental delays, that our refusal to enroll Luna in her infant enrichment programs was educational neglect, and that my postpartum anxiety was creating an unstable environment that could damage Luna's emotional development. Beverly presented documentation she had been secretly compiling about my parenting techniques, including photos she had taken during visits and detailed notes about Luna's daily routines that she claimed demonstrated my incompetence as a mother. The legal documents Beverly filed were professionally prepared and included testimonies from child development experts who worked for her childcare centers, claiming that Luna was at risk of developmental delays and emotional harm due to my inexperience and refusal to follow professional childcare recommendations. The custody petition alleged that Marcus was too inexperienced and emotionally dependent on me to recognize the risks to his daughter's welfare, and that immediate intervention was necessary to protect Luna from long-term damage caused by inadequate parenting. Beverly's attorneys had crafted a compelling case that positioned her as a child development expert who had identified serious problems that required court intervention to ensure Luna's safety and proper development. My fight to protect Luna from Beverly's custody attempt began when I realized that her documentation and expert testimonies seemed too comprehensive and coordinated to have been developed in response to genuine concerns about my parenting. Working with my own attorney and a private investigator, I began examining Beverly's business practices and professional relationships to understand how she had assembled such detailed evidence against me in such a short time. What we discovered was that Beverly had been planning to seek custody of Luna from the moment she learned about my pregnancy, and she had been systematically documenting my behavior and building her legal case while pretending to offer support and guidance as a loving grandmother. The investigation revealed that Beverly's entire childcare empire was built on a foundation of exploitation and manipulation that went far beyond her treatment of me and Luna. Her little Angels Academy centers had been systematically overcharging parents, falsifying educational credentials for staff members, and using psychologically manipulative techniques to convince parents that their children needed expensive additional services to avoid developmental problems. Beverly had been using her position as a child development expert to prey on parental anxieties and insecurities, creating artificial problems that could only be solved through her premium services and educational programs. Even more disturbing was the discovery that Beverly had attempted similar custody battles with other daughters-in-law and female family members over the years, using her professional reputation and financial resources to intimidate young mothers into surrendering control over their children's care and development. The private investigator found evidence of at least 4 previous cases where Beverly had threatened or initiated legal action against family members who refused to follow her childcare recommendations, and in 2 cases she had successfully gained custody or guardianship of children whose parents had been deemed unfit due to her expert testimony and documentation. The most shocking revelation came when we discovered that Beverly's own son Marcus had been removed from her custody when he was 7 years old due to emotional abuse and neglect, and that his glowing memories of his childhood were the result of psychological manipulation and false narratives that Beverly had created to maintain her image as a devoted mother. Court records showed that Marcus had been placed in foster care for 2 years after teachers and social workers documented Beverly's emotionally abusive treatment, including isolation from peers, excessive academic pressure, and psychological manipulation designed to make him completely dependent on her approval and guidance. My revenge against Beverly began with a comprehensive campaign to expose her fraudulent business practices and history of child abuse to regulatory agencies, law enforcement, and the parents who trusted her with their children's care and education. Working with federal investigators and state licensing boards, I provided evidence of Beverly's systematic fraud, including falsified educational credentials, inflated billing practices, and the use of unlicensed staff members to provide specialized services that parents paid premium prices to receive. The investigation revealed that Beverly had been operating her child care centers without proper licensing and oversight for several years, putting hundreds of children at risk while collecting millions of dollars from families who believed they were paying for the highest quality care available. I also worked with other victims of Beverly's manipulation to organize a class action lawsuit that would hold her accountable for the emotional and financial damage she had inflicted on families who had trusted her professional expertise and recommendations. The lawsuit included testimonies from parents who had been pressured into expensive and unnecessary services, former employees who had been forced to participate in fraudulent practices, and mental health professionals who documented the psychological harm Beverly had caused through her manipulative and exploitative treatment of vulnerable families. The most satisfying aspect of my revenge campaign was ensuring that Beverly would lose custody of Marcus himself, as Adult Protective Services investigated her history of psychological manipulation and emotional abuse that had continued into his adult life. Armed with evidence from court records, psychological evaluations, and testimonies from family members, I helped Marcus understand the extent of his mother's manipulation and abuse, supporting him through the painful process of recognizing that his entire relationship with Beverly had been based on psychological control and emotional exploitation. Marcus filed for a restraining order against his mother and began therapy to address the trauma and manipulation he had experienced throughout his life. The final phase of my revenge involved ensuring that Beverly's professional reputation and social status would be completely destroyed, making it impossible for her to continue exploiting vulnerable families or rebuilding her childcare empire in a different location. I arranged for media coverage of her arrest and criminal charges, focusing specifically on her attempts to steal custody of Luna and her history of manipulating other families through fraudulent claims about child development and parenting adequacy. The publicity surrounding her case served as a warning to other families about the dangers of trusting childcare providers who use fear and manipulation to control parental decisions. Beverly was ultimately convicted on multiple charges including fraud, child endangerment, and attempted kidnapping, resulting in a prison sentence of 12 years and the permanent revocation of all her professional licenses and certifications in early childhood education. Her child care centers were shut down permanently, and the families she had exploited received financial compensation through the class action settlement that covered both the money they had been defrauded of and the emotional damage caused by her manipulation. Most importantly, Marcus and I were awarded full custody of Luna along with a permanent restraining order that prevents Beverly from having any contact with our family ever again. Today, 3 years after Beverly's conviction, Marcus and I have built a happy, peaceful life with Luna and our new son Jake, free from the manipulation and control that nearly destroyed our family before it had a chance to truly begin. Marcus has successfully completed therapy to address his childhood trauma, and he now works as an advocate for other adults who have survived parental abuse and manipulation. I continue working in early childhood education, but now I specialize in helping parents recognize and resist manipulative childcare providers who prey on parental anxieties and insecurities. Beverly remains in prison where she works in the kitchen for less than $2 per day, having lost everything she built through lies and exploitation, while the children and families she tried to control have moved on to build healthy, happy lives without her toxic influence.